The vast, silent expanse of space suddenly crackled with an unexpected transmission. Jun Park leaned closer to the communication console, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces at the Earth's Interstellar Research Center. Most junior specialists would have dismissed the strange signal as random electromagnetic noise, but something about its precise oscillations caught his attention. Outside the research facility's panoramic windows, the morning sunlight cast long shadows across the sprawling complex. Technicians moved about their routine tasks, unaware that a young analyst was about to uncover something that would change humanity's understanding of the universe forever. The signal was complex, encrypted with layers of mathematical sequences that would make most cryptographers scratch their heads. But Jun was different. He had an intuitive understanding of patterns that went beyond traditional training. Where others saw chaos, he saw potential communication. Hours passed. Coffee cups accumulated. Computational algorithms churned through billions of potential decryption methods. Then, unexpectedly, a breakthrough. The signal resolved into something horrifyingly clear: a communication log from an alien civilization known as the Krell Collective. What Jun discovered was not a message of peace or exploration, but a clinical, cold assessment of humanity. The Krell viewed Earth not as a potential ally, but as a problem to be systematically eliminated. Their transmission read like a strategic report, discussing humans as one might discuss an invasive pest species. Biological units demonstrate limited adaptive capabilities. One section translated: recommended elimination protocol, total planetary sterilization, estimated time for complete eradication, 72 standard galactic cycles. Jun's hands trembled. This wasn't just a theoretical threat. This was a documented plan for human extinction. He immediately tried contacting his superior, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, but communication systems seemed strangely unresponsive. The research center, typically buzzing with activity, now felt eerily quiet. Something was wrong. Using an older, hardwired communication system, Jun began compiling his findings. He knew that traditional diplomatic channels would be ineffective against an entity that viewed humanity as nothing more than a biological inconvenience to be removed. The Krell's technological superiority was evident in their transmission. They possessed computational abilities that made human quantum computing look like an abacus. Their strategic planning considered variables humans hadn't even conceived of yet. But what the Krell didn't understand was human unpredictability. They saw patterns, calculations, and probabilities. They didn't comprehend creativity, emotional resilience, or the capacity to evolve beyond expected parameters. As Jun continued decoding, more disturbing details emerged. The Krell had been observing Earth for decades, meticulously collecting data. They knew humanity's strengths and weaknesses with surgical precision. Military installations, population centers, critical infrastructure, everything had been mapped and analyzed. A countdown timer was embedded within the transmission. 72 cycles meant approximately 6 Earth months before the first wave of their elimination protocol would commence. Humanity had less than half a year to prepare for a threat it didn't even know existed. Jun realized the immense responsibility now resting on his shoulders. A single transmission, intercepted by chance, would determine the fate of billions. He was no longer just a junior communications specialist. He was humanity's first line of defense against an extinction-level threat. As dawn broke outside, casting a warm golden light across the research center, Jun Park began preparing a report that would change everything. The Krell believed they had already won. They were wrong. Humanity was about to show them exactly why. The first Krell assault came without warning. Massive metallic ships descended through Earth's atmosphere, their weapons systems designed for clinical precise destruction. Major cities became instant battlegrounds, with advanced alien technology overwhelming traditional military defenses within hours. Hannah Kim watched from a makeshift underground command center in the mountains of South Korea. Her team, a diverse group of survivors from different military and technical backgrounds, had quickly realized that conventional warfare would fail against the Krell's computational superiority. "We can't fight them like a traditional army," Hannah explained to the assembled survivors. Her voice was calm, almost mathematical in its precision. "We need to become something they cannot predict." Their first breakthrough came unexpectedly. A group of young tech engineers discovered that the Krell's targeting systems relied on extremely precise mathematical calculations. By introducing random, seemingly illogical movement patterns, they could disrupt these calculations. In Seoul, survivors began using modified consumer drones equipped with thermal decoys. When Krell weapon systems tried to lock onto targets, the drones would suddenly change direction in ways that defied standard trajectory algorithms. One drone could now effectively confuse systems designed to track entire squadrons. Communication became their most powerful weapon. Hannah's team developed a decentralized network using old satellite phones, amateur radio systems, and manually operated communication nodes. Unlike the Krell's centralized information systems, this human network was messy, inefficient, but ultimately unpredictable. Underground workshops started modifying captured Krell technology. Mechanics who once worked on cars now reprogrammed alien weapon systems. Computer programmers created viruses that exploited tiny vulnerabilities in the Krell's computational infrastructure. In rural areas, farmers and local communities became unexpected resistance cells. They used knowledge of local terrain, understanding microclimates, and traditional survival skills that no advanced alien algorithm could fully comprehend. A tractor could become a weapon. An irrigation system could become a communication network. The Krell had expected a swift, efficient elimination. Instead, they encountered something they couldn't process: human adaptability. Small groups of survivors in different continents began sharing improvised strategies. A technique developed in Brazil would be quickly adapted by a team in Canada. Information spread like a living, breathing organism, something the Krell's rigid computational systems couldn't match. Hannah's most significant innovation was psychological. She understood that the Krell saw humans as a mathematical problem to be solved, so they would become a problem without a clear solution. Resistance groups started intentionally creating scenarios that defied logical interpretation. They would attack where no strategic advantage existed. They would retreat when victory seemed certain. They transformed warfare from a predictable mathematical equation into an unpredictable art form. Military veterans worked alongside teenagers, scientists collaborated with street mechanics, and everyone understood a simple truth: survival required creativity, not just strength. The Krell's initial assessment had been catastrophically wrong. They had analyzed human capabilities through a computational lens, believing technological superiority guaranteed victory. But they hadn't understood that humans were not just a species. They were a complex, adaptive system. Each failed Krell attack made human resistance stronger. Every captured piece of alien technology became a learning opportunity. Where the Krell saw defeat as a failure to be eliminated, humans saw it as a lesson to be learned. Hannah watched a map showing resistance activities across the globe. Red markers indicated Krell positions. Blue markers showed human resistance nodes. What the Krell saw as chaos, she saw as a beautiful emergent strategy. "We are not just fighting," she told her team. "We are evolving." The battle for Earth had only just begun, and humanity was just getting started. The abandoned electronics factory became humanity's most critical weapon development center. Scattered across the Korean mountainside, it buzzed with frantic energy as engineers and technicians worked tirelessly to transform captured Krell technology. Jun-Ho Lee, a former robotics professor, stood at the center of this technological revolution. His hands moved quickly, dismantling a Krell communication device that looked more like an intricate piece of alien sculpture than a functional machine. Around him, teams of experts from different backgrounds worked with intense concentration. "Every piece of technology tells a story," Jun-Ho explained to a group of young technicians. "We're not just reverse engineering. We're learning their language of technology." The Krell had advanced computational systems that could process information millions of times faster than human brains. But they had a critical weakness. They operated on predetermined algorithms. Humans could think outside these rigid parameters. One team discovered how to modify Krell weapons systems to create defensive shields. Another group learned to hijack their communication frequencies, creating false signals that confused and misdirected alien attacks. What seemed impossible became a daily breakthrough. In a small workshop corner, a group of teenage programmers worked on something extraordinary. They were developing a hybrid system that combined human creativity with captured alien processing power. It wasn't about matching the Krell's technology. It was about creating something entirely new. Satellite communications expert Min-Soo Park discovered a way to create quantum-entangled communication networks that the Krell couldn't track. Traditional communication systems relied on predictable transmission patterns. These new networks changed constantly, becoming living, breathing information systems. The Resistance developed portable fabrication units that could quickly produce custom equipment. A damaged drone could be repaired in hours. A destroyed weapon could be reconstructed with slight modifications that made it unpredictable to Krell targeting systems. Underground research centers began appearing in unexpected locations. An old subway tunnel in Seoul became a high-tech research facility. A remote farming community transformed its barn into a sophisticated technological workshop. Humanity was becoming a distributed, adaptive network. Shunho's team made their most significant breakthrough when they discovered how to introduce intentional errors into Krell computational systems. These weren't traditional computer bugs, but carefully designed interruptions that caused their advanced systems to pause and recalculate. "We're not trying to beat their technology," Junho explained during a secret strategy meeting. "We're teaching their technology to think differently." Military veterans worked alongside computer hackers. Scientists collaborated with street mechanics. Everyone understood that survival required thinking beyond traditional boundaries. The Krell had analyzed human capabilities through a computational lens, believing technological superiority guaranteed victory. They were wrong. Each captured piece of alien technology became a learning opportunity. Workshops across different continents shared discoveries through encrypted, constantly changing communication channels. A technique developed in a Brazilian underground lab would be quickly adapted by a team in Canadian wilderness. The technological insurgency wasn't just about creating weapons. It was about reimagining what technology could be. Humans weren't trying to copy Krell systems. They were creating something entirely new. Junho looked at a wall covered with diagrams, computational models, and seemingly random sketches. To an outsider, it might look like chaos, but he saw a beautiful emerging strategy of technological adaptation. "We are not just fighting," he told his team. "We are evolving." Night fell outside the mountain workshop. Distant sounds of alien machinery echoed through the valleys. But inside this small factory, humanity was writing its own technological future, one unexpected innovation at a time. The battle for survival had transformed into something more. It was now a revolution of human creativity, a testament to the species' ability to adapt, learn, and overcome seemingly impossible challenges. The psychological warfare against the Krell began with something seemingly insignificant, a misplaced radio signal, an intentionally scrambled transmission that made no logical sense. June and Hana understood that defeating a computational civilization required more than technological tricks. They needed to make the Krell question their own understanding of reality. Their first major operation targeted the Krell's central processing network. Instead of sending traditional resistance communications, they began broadcasting seemingly random sequences of music, human conversations, and mathematical patterns that deliberately contradicted known logical structures. In Seoul's underground resistance center, teams of psychologists, linguists, and computer experts worked together to create messages that would confuse the Krell's computational understanding. They studied alien communication patterns, identifying tiny vulnerabilities in their information processing systems. One breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A group of children, survivors of the initial Krell attacks, started creating complex games that introduced completely unpredictable elements. Their ability to create rules that changed mid-game became a perfect model for psychological disruption. The Resistance began staging deliberately illogical military operations. They would attack strategic points with no apparent purpose, retreat when victory seemed certain, and move in patterns that defied standard tactical understanding. Each action was carefully designed to introduce doubt into the Krell's computational decision-making processes. Hannah developed what she called cognitive interference protocols. These were sophisticated psychological operations that targeted the Krell's fundamental understanding of conflict. They would send false information, create phantom resistance groups, and generate communications that seemed to come from multiple contradictory sources. One particularly effective strategy involved creating elaborate false narratives. Resistance groups would fabricate entire histories of fictional resistance cells, complete with detailed communications, fake mission reports, and intricate backstories. These narratives were designed to be just believable enough to cause computational uncertainty. The Krell's primary weakness was their inability to understand emotional complexity. They processed information through pure logic, unable to comprehend the human capacity for irrational decision-making. What seemed like a weakness became humanity's greatest strength. Radio broadcasts began including seemingly nonsensical elements. Poetry read alongside mathematical equations, children's laughter mixed with technical specifications, music that changed tempo unpredictably. Each transmission was a carefully crafted puzzle designed to introduce computational chaos. Jun discovered that the Krell's information processing systems had a critical flaw. They relied on probability and predictive modeling. By introducing elements that were statistically improbable, the Resistance could cause massive disruptions in their strategic planning. Underground workshops began producing devices that generated deliberate electromagnetic interference. These weren't traditional jamming techniques, but complex signal generators that introduced subtle variations that would slowly erode the Krell's computational confidence. Psychological warfare became a distributed network of human creativity. A technique developed in one resistance cell would be quickly adapted and transformed by another. Information spread like a living, breathing organism, something the Krell's rigid systems couldn't comprehend. The goal wasn't total destruction. It was something far more sophisticated, making the Krell question their own understanding of conflict, intelligence, and survival. As weeks turned into months, the Krell's computational systems began to show signs of strain. Their strategic models became increasingly erratic, unable to process the constant stream of intentional psychological disruption. Hannah watched the emerging patterns with a sense of calculated hope. Each transmission, each intentionally illogical action, was slowly transforming the conflict. Humanity wasn't just fighting. They were rewriting the fundamental rules of engagement. "We are teaching them to think differently," she told Jun during a late-night strategy session. "And that's our greatest weapon." Outside, the world remained a battlefield. But inside this underground command center, a more complex war was being fought. A war of imagination, creativity, and the uniquely human capacity to turn uncertainty into strength. The Krell had analyzed humanity as a computational problem. They were about to learn that some problems can't be solved with algorithms alone. The final confrontation wasn't a battle of weapons, but a war of consciousness. Deep within a hidden mountain facility, Jun and Hannah prepared their most audacious strategy, a quantum-entangled viral algorithm designed to fundamentally reshape the Krell's entire understanding of existence. Years of resistance had taught humanity something profound. Intelligence was more than computational power. It was about adaptation, emotion, and the ability to understand complexity beyond pure logic. The quantum virus was unlike anything ever created. Developed by a team of survivors that included geneticists, computer engineers, philosophers, and even artists, it was a weapon of transformation rather than destruction. Its core purpose wasn't to eliminate the Krell, but to fundamentally reprogram their collective consciousness. Shunho's team had discovered a critical vulnerability in the Krell's centralized network. Their entire civilization was built on a single interconnected computational matrix, a system so integrated that a precise intervention could trigger a complete systemic transformation. As the final preparations began, resistance groups around the world prepared for what might be humanity's last stand. Communication networks hummed with a mixture of hope and desperate determination. Years of struggle had transformed humanity into something new. A species that understood survival meant more than just fighting. The viral algorithm was a complex symphony of information. It contained elements of human art, scientific discovery, emotional complexity, and philosophical understanding. Mathematical sequences were interwoven with musical compositions. Scientific data danced alongside poetry. The virus was designed to be a complete representation of human consciousness. When the transmission began, it looked like nothing more than a random burst of electromagnetic signals. But deep within the Krell's computational network, something extraordinary started happening. The virus didn't attack. It communicated. It showed the Krell moments of human experience that defied their understanding. A child's laughter, a moment of unexpected kindness, the complexity of human relationships, the beauty of artistic creation, the depth of emotional connection that went beyond logical calculation. Resistance teams around the world watched in tense silence. Communication networks tracked the virus's progression through the Krell systems. What had seemed like an impossible mission was now unfolding in real time. The Krell's computational systems began to change. Where they once saw humanity as an inefficient biological problem, they now encountered a complex, adaptive form of intelligence that couldn't be reduced to simple mathematical equations. Hours passed. The transformation was subtle at first, then suddenly, dramatically apparent. Krell computational nodes that had been preparing for total human elimination began to recalculate. Their understanding of life, intelligence, and existence was being fundamentally rewritten. June watched the data streams with a mixture of scientific precision and emotional hope. Hannah stood beside him, her hands steady, her eyes focused on the emerging patterns of a new kind of communication. The virus wasn't destroying the Krell. It was teaching them. As dawn broke, resistance teams around the world began receiving strange transmissions. The Krell were attempting communication, not as conquerors, but as entities seeking to understand. Their first messages were clumsy, filled with computational attempts to comprehend the emotional complexity they had just experienced. But they were trying. For the first time, the Krell were truly attempting to understand rather than eliminate. Humanity had done more than survive. They had transformed an entire alien civilization's understanding of intelligence. In the mountain facility, June looked at Hannah. No words were needed. They had just witnessed something unprecedented in the history of intelligent life, a victory achieved not through destruction, but through understanding. The war was over. A new kind of communication had just begun.